All right. Hello, good afternoon, good evening. How we doing today? How we doing? Good? Good? Bad? Let me know. How are you feeling about this? Of course they do. Riley, Suvik, Vishal. Hello, good afternoon from Michigan. Hello from Phoenix. Evening from Berlin. Nice. Naveen, Swiss, Rohan. Asa, good to see you all. All the names I recognize all the time for being here regularly. You ready to get hurt? I am too. But you know, I have a good feeling about today. There's games I have a good feeling about. There's games I'm calm about. There's games I'm just, it's just okay. And today feels like one of those days. We'll see. I'm good though. Hello everybody. I recognize a lot of you here. Good. I'm good. Let me see the lineup, obviously, because if if I see Casemiro starting again, then my Zen Wednesday moment will be shattered. That image will be shattered right off the bat. Hey James, you're doing an amazing job for the United Community. Respect from India. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm going to do my YouTube put my YouTube job on here and say, please like the video, share, subscribe, turn your notifications on, do all of those things to help us, to help the channel and all of that. I have the smile of a guy who knows Cheetos starting. No, I do not know that. But the team news comes out in like 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes, I think. From Barrier. Hey James, hope you're doing well. You're right. Yes. Hi Paul. I know. I'm not I've been told I need to do better. I was having somebody help me like post clips and things on Instagram and TikTok and what like not, and they'll probably do that. But they were telling me, you gotta be like, you gotta be better at YouTube. Not better at being you, better at doing YouTube. Didn't have a good feeling about Everton? Not really, but we got a draw. End of the day, we got a draw in one of probably the toughest places to play in the league, even though it was one of the worst games I've ever seen. Yeah, I actually, I've stopped asking about the team news and leaks ahead of time. They're still there, by the way. The funny thing about it is people think that like the leaks have stopped. They really haven't. It's just that people like myself and a few others kind of decided to stop saying anything. And the reason for that is in part because it started getting people in trouble, I think, who probably shouldn't have been in trouble. I was always pretty careful not to leak too early because I think that it so that it doesn't have a problem with the cause a problem for the team. But there was concerns within the dressing room about the leak, concern from Amarim about leaks and things like that. And my view has always been that the leaks are, that I know of, some of the dangerous leaks out there. They have no idea where they're coming from, unfortunately. But a lot of people like myself kind of decided, there's people getting accused of this shit who shouldn't be. Players, things like that, it's causing trouble for. So why not just not post anything about it? I mean, what's it really do, honestly? A little bit of interaction, a little bit of, Twitter views, 50 cents worth of Elon's money. I mean, I like to take Elon's money, but no, it's just not worth it. So anyway, we've kind of all stopped doing that. So I've stopped even asking, and I'm just most of the time just ready and just to say I'll just be here when the team news comes out, because it's kind of like, what's the point? You know what I mean? What's really the advantage at the end of the day to doing it? So I haven't actually asked a single person about the team yet today, and I'm okay with that. So we'll find out together in like 30 seconds or something like that. But yeah, raining a lot as well as it usually is. Um, so yes, an interesting day today. We'll talk about the team news in a second. I want to talk about Vivell. This is something I'm going to be doing a lot of. Oh, what are you doing? A lot of work on looking into more over the next few weeks in terms of what he's doing, the whole restructuring that's going on, and all of that. Because as far as my understanding is, it's a little bit bigger. Okay, there's the team. No Casemiro. That's a good team. That's a good team. That's a good team. That's kind of what we thought it would be. Okay, fair enough. It's a good team. All right, let's look at the team. Let's prop it up here and let's run through. This is pretty close to what we thought. We voted Ericsson in here, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. This is given what's available, this is what we have. So, given what's available, this is what we kind of knew it would be, right? We don't really have to wonder who's starting where. Yep. We've got, let's put Yoro on the left. I don't know if he'll be on the left or the right, mind you. Yeah, I mean, this is like the healthy 11 when you look at the bench. What else is there? I don't like Bruno deep, but it's a hell of a lot better than is it not? Is it Lindelof instead of? No, it's Maguire. Yeah, I was gonna say there's no way it's not Maguire. Lindelof, Mazraoui made the bench. That's a good news. So even if he's not fully fit, he made the bench. That's good. Ericsson, Obi, Mazraoui, those would be players I expect to come on in the second half of this game. Look, yeah, Højlund's probably lucky to be getting games, but there's not really a lot of options here. We don't know. This could be fluid. It could be like this. We don't know. I'd like to see it more like this as well. But I think what's really, I think it's about as strong as we could have gone in this game. The biggest factors to me are, when Dorgu's getting up the pitch, are we getting him those runs in there? Are we finding those passes? Dalot needs to really be aggressive offensively. Every time he thinks he's in the right spot, he needs to move like 5, 10 yards up the pitch. And I think that will help a lot. I'm pretty fine with the midfield, but we need to score some goals. We need to put some pressure on the Ipswich back line with this team. We've got to be able to put some serious pressure on them. Look, it's a good enough team to beat Ipswich. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's a good enough team. There's enough quality here between Ugarte, Bruno, Xerxes, Garnacho, and Dorgu to get something done. If Garnacho can finish one of his chances one of these days, then that would be great. Oh yeah, Ryan, in the watch along, I'm gonna have I got my notepad ready. Okay, I've got my notepad ready, and I'm going to be noting down things I want to see how many times it happens, good and bad. I want to see how many overlap runs are made, how many times we pass to them, and how many times we don't. Both sides. I want to see how many from Dorgu, how many from Dalot, and I'm gonna be noting them down because I want to see improvement on this. It's something that's so hard to excuse me. It's something that's so hard to track. Last time Bruno did really well tracking it down. Bruno did really well doing it when he was up there. It didn't result in goals, but they were some of the good moves that we made. The biggest thing, though, I want to see today, because let's be real for a second, guys. Like, we actually did decently well in the second half last week, or Saturday, whatever it was. But the biggest problem in the first half, which Emram talked about, was these guys played with absolutely zero fucking intensity. Zero fucking intensity. Zero energy. And you guys know me. I'm not a guy like that. I genuinely often don't talk about that very much. I don't talk about intensity that much in terms of energy. I don't usually use that as the main critique. I don't default to it. I don't often say they're not trying or stuff. But that first half against Everton, those fuckers were not trying. and it was obvious. It was obvious. That's when those are the games when I think, that's what it looks like when a team isn't trying. There's games where people say there is, and I don't buy it. That is what a game looked like when players weren't trying, and that to me was completely unacceptable. Not everybody, mind you, not everybody, because there were players that worked really hard in that game. There was players that were bad in that game, but there was a number of players that did not try in that game, and one of them is not starting today. And I think that's important because in the post match thing and in my video and discussions, I was saying, look, there's a level of sabotage that goes in where it's like, and that cannot be in the team. So I'd rather see Bruno deep a million times than that, because at least, Bruno, I think it's taking his best qualities away from goal. But at the same time, I'd rather him there being calm than someone just constantly throwing the game to the opposition for 45 minutes until we're down 2 goals. So I am okay with that. The other thing I wanted to note that was really interesting. Let me try to find it. Hold on. I'm going to try to find this because Amram made a really interesting comment the other day. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Where is this? I want to find this because I think it's like highly demonstrative of what exactly Hoyland needs to do and what he's doing better. And I think that there's things he can do that would actually play into his strengths a little bit more. Yes, he's struggled, but yes, there are ways to play into his strengths too. And it's actually interesting because if you take Ruben Amorim at his word on certain things, how the hell do I open this game? There we go. Oh, then you would kind of think that the part that Hoyland is doing is that we all hate, that we all think is the worst part of him, is things he shouldn't be doing. What were Amorim's comments in particular? He said, I'm just trying to find them. If somebody has a link, you could drop it in here. That would be helpful to me. But I'm trying to find the link. The what's it called? I'm trying to find the quote because he was talking about Hoyland like dropping deep away from goal instead of going to the ball to try to get on the ball because he's not getting enough touches. And I want to talk about that because obviously that's kind of the opposite of like Xerxes in terms of profile. And I want to show a really good example of this. So I'm just trying to find it. Apologies for that. Somebody does sometimes okay, thank you for that. Thank you for giving me just writing it down. Sometimes he doesn't choose the better run. Sometimes he's so anxious to touch the ball, he moves away from the goal. We address that in training. Sometimes the confidence of the player, right? So we've seen that like against Tottenham, there were some really good moments where he's running the channels. And let's go to Liverpool here. This was our shape against Liverpool. And I said back then, this is the perfect Amorim shape. This is exactly what it should look like. And it was no surprise that was one of our best games. This is perfect, for Amorim. And there's a few things about it, right? Obviously, the back three in a line is good. The slightly imbalanced two in the midfield where one's more attacking, one's more of a shield. The 2 10s that are a bit deeper, but the wing backs high, more like making an actual 3-4-3, not a 5-2-3. But the other thing that is huge is this in particular. This is really, really important that the number 9 in his system actually makes like a tip of the spear type of things, okay? Type of shape, type of setup. He wants that 9 to consistently be up the pitch, be pushing the back line, be stretching. If you watch Gyökeres play this season, I'm not comparing them in quality, but there's a reason why when Amarim came in, I thought Højlund would be quite good, because there's an aspect of this game, and it is there, and other people have commented on it as well, that does reflect a lot of the movements and the motions that Gyökeres can do, which is the constant running into the channels, stretching and pushing the back line a little bit deeper, because it has a multiple effect on the team when you do that. Not only does it open up passing angles to send it long, but it also pushes the back line in to open up space in the center of the pitch for balls into the number 10s. And our best moments with Højlund on have come when he is doing that consistently, when he's running consistently, when he's making those channel runs. He's terrible when he drops in here. Yeah, Athletic article mentioned it as well. He's absolutely terrible when he drops in here. He's bad at that. So the point of, sometimes he's so anxious to touch the ball and moves away from goal. He has to, it can be rough for a striker, not get a lot of service, not get a lot of balls in there. But that doesn't mean you stop and you start coming deep to play the ball. He doesn't want him to be coming deep to play the ball. He wants him to be running up the pitch to stretch the defense. He's got the number 10s to drop in, and this is pretty integral to the whole approach from Amarim, is that this player is stretching the back line, so that these players can come in, so that these players can drag defenders, so that this guy can run in here. You can get balls into the channels. It's a huge part of it, and in theory, this is very, very balanced in how it plays, and it's the biggest part of the shape. Is he's got to keep that. When he starts collapsing in, then we're really in trouble, because when we get squished like this, we have nowhere to go. There's no outlets. There's nowhere to run. The defense, there's nowhere to drag anybody, and you just have to then hope you can play through a team without manipulating them at all. And then you're purely basing it off of, is your passing quicker? Is your one touch better than the defense? And any mistake is punished heavily. But by stretching the opposition, and creating spaces, it opens up a lot more angles. And that's the biggest thing that he has to do. And ironically, it would eliminate his biggest weakness if he would just stop dropping in. Right? And that means movement. It doesn't mean sitting here. It means running and doing a lot of these curling runs, okay? Because whenever these 10s drop in, they're dragging defenders. He needs to recognize that and run to that side. Every single time he needs to be, if you watch Gyökeres, it's what he does so well. Every time, boom, he runs behind. When the 10 drops, he runs behind. When the 10 drops, he runs behind. Both sides, every direction, constant. And it opens up passes. Now, the back line have to be brave with their passing. The fullbacks, the wingbacks have to be brave with their passing. You have to be able to find that pass, but you have to keep making that run no matter how many times you do it. If you don't get the ball, you just have to keep making that run. And yes, we don't have another striker who will do that. Xerxes not that guy. Xerxes finding his footing as a 10, and I think that's what he can be. So Højlund's got to do that. He just has to. He has to make those runs. He has to make those plays. And it doesn't matter when he makes those runs, no one passes to him. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That is a huge part of life as a striker. You have to keep making those runs, even if you're not getting the ball, because it does move the defense around. It does open up space for the team. When you get discouraged and stop doing it and start dropping deep, it only exacerbates the issue, because then you pick it up here, you lose it, and it's even worse, and you create less space for yourself. And that's on him. Look, this is about quality as a player. You can't blame anybody else for it. He has to have the football intelligence to continue making the runs, but also make the right runs and get better at that. He's got to do it. That's on him. We have to get better at playing those balls, but he has to be better at doing them. So he's got to make those runs. He has to. He's got to be constantly doing it, and we know that we can. We saw it against Tottenham, but then the runs stop happening. It worked for a little while there. We've seen it in some recent times, but he's got to do it. And that's where it is on him. And those are the things that I think he can control, doing, but that's entirely on him. This isn't, I think he's been awful recently. He's not that well-rounded. He is fast. He is big. He can run into the channels, so do it, so do it. And it's on him if he doesn't play to his own strengths as well, because, it's your game. It's your game. So that I'm going to be looking out for a lot today. Does he stay sticking on that back line and making those runs? That's number one. That's my number one thing to look out for today. Number two, whatever side Garnacho is on, does he pass to the overlap? That's number two. It has to happen. He's got to play that fucking overlap. He has to. Okay. Number three is, does Dallo get forward? Because I think that determines whether we win or not today. Obviously, there could be like catastrophic errors, like Onana continuously putting the ball in our own net. But from a controlled aspect, and in terms of just what players are doing positionally and with their own decisions, make the runs, pass to the overlap, get the hell up the pitch, and be aggressive in the attack. If those three things happen, then I think we win pretty handily, actually, because there's enough signs that we can do those movements. There's enough signs that we can make this happen. So, yeah. So we have to make this happen. Those are the three things that I want to see today. Beyond that, we kind of know what else has to happen. We know, obviously there's the individual defending qualities. There's good passing. Onana not chucking it in the net. Yada yada. But and then obviously the fourth other thing. I did a video. I did a video on Friday, Saturday afternoon rather, and I was showing like there was people talking about the build-up structure and how it was this like disastrous situation because Maguire steps up into the midfield and it creates this huge problem and there's no way out of it and it's all a tactical issue. And then I showed later on, someone sent to me a picture of Liverpool in the exact same position, and it looks kind of like this with the ball over by Dallo. Exact same position, exact same setup, exact same pressing structure, everybody in like the exact same positions. And the only difference was Dallo hits the ball with his left foot right here, because the play was for an Amorim team is manipulating the defense and hitting a big switch. Euro, or it was actually De Ligt in this game, was wide open in space, as was the left-sided. There was even a ball right here to, I think, Casemiro it was at the time, who was available in the middle. Dallo hits the ball, whiffs it, pops up in the air, comes back. Trent hits the ball correctly, passes it to the player calmly out of pressure, and Liverpool work out of the press. The vast majority of the issues that we are seeing in build up and things like that I see are being completely tied to tactical problems are simply player quality issues. And week in and week out, I'm watching other teams end up in the same situations and play out of it simply due to player quality. But that's really the fourth thing that I want to see is in the build-up structure. When we're moving the ball from one side to the other and we get the opponent to commit, which does happen, and they'll overcommit to one side as a part of the structure, are we capable of hitting that proper switch, that proper out ball that gets it out of pressure to the other side and helps us get up and down the pitch? I've gone on and on and on, and if you watch the things all the time, I talk about the big switch that United have to do, and that is a huge part of the Amorim game. Ipswich can do it. Yeah, you will watch them do it. They'll get pinned to one side and then they'll switch the ball to the other side out of pressure. It's not even like that weird of a tactic. It's been, Pep made it pretty meta for like 5-6 years ago, the switching aspect of it, of baiting a press and then switching the play. And that's why he likes such strong ball players out of the back and always has, because you have to be able to do that. It's a normal part of a 3 buildup that has been happening for some time. Everybody can do it. Dallo not having the technique of Tent isn't a talent, it's your tactical show. No, it's not. That's why he wants Kenda, because Kenda is left-footed and will hit that pass, and it happens mostly to the right. It happens mostly on the right with a switch to the left side or a ball down the line on this side that Dallo is also not capable of doing. I even showed in that video, we kind of looked at the goals from Sporting against City. I even looked at that. And and they scored a lot of pretty identical goals. And it is what it is. But he tried Dorgu on the right for that reason, so that he could have a left footer there. And if Ahmad was healthy, he'd be playing Ahmad there. But he's not going to stop his entire build-up structure that he's trying to lay in to adjust for Diogo Dalot. It's just not going to happen. But that's okay. So let's move on. Those are my four kind of keys to the game. I'm noting them down because I want to talk about them afterwards. Hold on. Runs. Garnacho overlaps. Dalot aggression. And big switch. Switch and build up. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, 4 Liverpool players check out the pitch at the same time on a switch of play. Yeah. Relying on a square pass, Dalot, the stupidest. Well, he's there. He's got to do it, but that's why you want to sign somebody else. So yeah, I wanted to talk now about Vivell for a little bit here, and this whole kind of news that come out. Not that it was unexpected, but that is rather interesting. Obviously, The Athletic were talking about this, that there's going to be cuts to the scouting department and all of that, and then there's also stuff like I retweeted an article reposted an article from the guy Mafciel Michel, the journalist Christopher Michel, as well, kind of talking about potentially shifting in the strategies and things like that. And one of the things we've been talking about is obviously being going younger in the recruitment, right? And not doing so much wasteful spending, because it's a big part of what has gone wrong. And, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal in all of this. But Vivell coming in on a permanent basis is about far more. And I've had some really good conversations already in the last day or two to find out more about this. And I'll probably make a whole video. About this end of the day. Not today, but maybe, probably later this week or next week, because I found out a lot about what Vivell is going to do. And it's a lot more than simply just come in, we're going to use his network to replace scouts. Okay, it's a lot more than that. One of the things I've said for a long time, is that that there's a lot of good scouts at United. There's a lot of times where United have been able to identify the right players, good players, young players, affordable players, prospects, things like that, and then we never go for them. Right? We never end up getting them. And that has even continued into this season. Sver Nipan, player that United really like. Well, he hasn't moved to anybody. It's still on the table, and by the way, definitely still keep an eye on that. Based on the conversations I've had, I would definitely still keep an eye on that. Just, maybe in summer or next January or something, but definitely still keep an eye on that. But players like that, we've seen it like Tottenham, like Bergvall, for example. He was a player we could have signed before that we didn't. And a huge part of it has been the identification of good players, but essentially being ignored. The reporting structures, the way that the scouts' information and the recruitment department's information is collated, the way that it's organized, the way that it's passed up the channels. So, in many instances, we had things like scouts recommending a lot of players, and then, the manager's just picking their own and saying, go scout these guys, go scout these players that I want you to look at. And it's like, so they're always going to be picking who the manager wants over the scouts and things like that. And then there's the worst problem, which is significantly worse than this, which is like the reports are sent up, but then completely ignored by Woodward or Joe Glazer or Arnold or whoever it is, right? Or in many instances, as it was said to me, we need a player for this position. Here's a good young player. Here's a big name. We pick the big name as who's always selected, and all the information on the younger players and other people are just tossed out, because literally being picked for and signing players for their name and for the fact that they are a big name. Well, United want to move obviously away from that because it's been disastrous. Instances where they looked at like Declan Rice when he was much younger and instead went for the big name, the bigger name player that was out there that was like irrelevant to the matter. That ends up being a disaster, or they've dumped so many instances of doing that. And sometimes the few times that we have, like in the instance of Ahmad, where they just decided to get the young player, what you look at is really hilarious, right? Is that Jadon Sancho was at the time like 100 million. They made an offer of like 100 million that year. And instead, the scouts had said, what about Pellistri and Ahmad? Why don't we buy 2 players instead of Sancho? Look at it. Costs a hell of a lot less, and see what happens. Well, it turns out Ahmad's a better player than Jadon Sancho. And, and it's like, now imagine if that had happened in most instances of the flops, where you get 2 young players, one works out, one doesn't, you sell them on, you don't lose a lot of money, and you start to do that as a better strategy instead of the riskier, expensive players, especially while rebuilding. Now, this doesn't mean forever. This doesn't mean that that's the only approach. That doesn't mean that you don't get, a good player from here and there. But we've always ignored the young players, and we've never balanced it. We've never ever balanced it with buying a more ready player and a young player or 2. And we've never made that balance. We've always gone, all in on just trying to get players to win now. And then it doesn't do anything for us. And the reports have been there. The scouting network has been there to identify these players. All of that has been there to identify these players, to look at it. But it's just been completely, ignored for the longest time. So, the entire body of work of the recruitment department and what they're doing was evaluated over the last 5-6 years. And they felt like, yeah, they've been able to identify a significant number of good young players, that made it work. Right. Caicedo, Alvarez, Bellingham, people like that they liked. And some of them can seem obvious now, but they were not always obvious. Hell, even Enzo Fernandez was identified prior to that. Prior to his huge move, I'm not saying that this was the right thing, but the point is, like, they even had opportunities to sign Darwin Nunez for like 15-20 million. But the year before he went to Liverpool. Now, for 15 to 20 million, Nunez is probably a good player, but it's, again, less of a risk. You know what I mean? He's obviously been a flop at 72, 80 million. He's still a lot better than what we paid for 72 million. But sure, if you're paying 15 to 20 million, you'd be better. Examples could go on and on. I could go through the lists of players that have been suggested, and about half of them have turned out great. And half of them haven't. But you could have bought 3 of them for the price of the one that we bought that didn't turn out well. And they'd be on lower wages. And so, there's a balance to doing this where you're buying enough of those young players coming in and bringing them through, while also getting, the players that you want. More ready-made players in certain positions. Yeah, João Neves, we could go on with the examples. A lot of examples on what makes this work. And what gets everything tick. I think that Liverpool did do a really, really good job on this, where they bought a lot of young players, and then they bought some big players on top of it. But if you look at the overall rebuild of Liverpool, it flies in the face of a lot of people's claims, and the same as Arsenal. They bought a lot of young players coming in that were not totally ready. And then they bought cherry on tops after that, and they bought a few senior players to balance with it. Dominic, what do you make of Rasmus' support from Amram? Good to see a manager back players and take blame. They just play players and ignore results. Sure. I think it was a good comment, and we kind of covered what he meant and what Rasmus can do better. And he's right about that too. So it's on Rasmus to do it, but also obviously making a pass more often, will help him in doing what he's supposed to do. So there is a balance, but, there's also the Trents, the Robertsons, these types of players that were not necessarily, the Manes. There's a lot of balance in this, in the best teams that have built players. Arsenal have bought a lot of young players in their rebuild to replace older players, and then they got some in the middle. young doesn't mean academy, but every good team has built and bought a lot of young players. But again, I think people get confused by City because they bought a ton, and have only started refreshing their team now, fully refreshing their team from like 10, 12 years ago. And Arsenal haven't won a trophy in 5 years because their manager's an idiot. And he's ruined their project of hiring and buying young players by buying bad players on top of that and focusing on the wrong things and starting to waste money. But the majority of teams have been built successfully. Real Madrid have been doing this for the longest time, if you want the best example. They buy Galacticos and they buy players way before they're ready and get them into their team. Barcelona's the same. Barcelona and Madrid are the perfect example of the blend that you get when you buy some good senior players and you buy a lot of young players that come into the team. And if you want to choose to ignore that for your examples, then you're crazy, because Madrid and Barcelona have done amazing at doing that over the years. Madrid have for years always had younger players to come through the ranks. Always had like almost a full second team of players to come through the ranks and start to bed in and become, the best. And Barcelona have, and so have many, many, many others. Madrid tries to snap up the absolute top young talents when they're 18, 19, 20. And Sir Alex used to do it all the time as well, correct. There is a balance here that is necessary, and that's what United are going to be going for, because they've only been getting, those types of the only buying experienced players, and it hasn't worked out. Barcelona's been a little crazy, but you look at the biggest mistakes like that Madrid and Barcelona have made, and City for that matter. What are they? Hazard, Grealish, and Coutinho. When they stopped buying young and started spending massive amounts of money on players who were older. Those are the biggest mistakes that you can make, is buying those players. For each of them, those are the three biggest transfer mistakes of the last 10 years. Hazard, older. Grealish, not necessarily older, but they spent a hell of a lot of money for him. And then Coutinho, again, not necessarily older, but he was well established, and they paid an enormous fee for him, like he was going to change their lives, and they didn't. So it is interesting that happens. Whereas you look at, there's a good blend, but United need to have that blend. They need to do it right. One of the things they don't want to do this summer is to spend, 50 million on every single player, that comes in, and ignore a lot of the young players that could be out there. And just not do that and wait, ruin the budget by only being able to buy a few when they need a lot. And then hoping every single one works out, but then they're on big wages and you can't shift them and all of that. So there's an overall change coming, and Vivell's essentially role is a lot bigger, and not just him, obviously, but it's alongside Wilcox, is a lot more than just, hey, we're going to sack a few scouts and replace you in that network. The job is to restructure the entire recruitment department and how it runs, okay? The job is to redo that in its entirety, to completely overhaul the flow of information in terms of reporting, in terms of decisions, in terms of all of that, to make it a lot better in that respect. So it's not going through loads and loads and loads and loads of these ways to go. Loads and loads of these levels that it keeps having to go through to get a report, and to kind of change that. And they've obviously also identified that there's a lot of scouts who are very good, a lot of people who know things, a lot of people who've identified great talents that they should have bought before they were in there. So that is a big shift that is coming in with this change that is happening. And this summer we are definitely going to see, probably not like we saw last summer. It's very unlikely that we'll be buying 6-7 players at 50-60 million or something like that. But it's probably going to be definitely bent towards, the lower priced, some lower priced younger players, and trying to get as many as you can. So you think of the Dorgu deals. We want to do a lot more like that. A lot more of the Dorgu type of purchases, 20 to 30 million for, right, Dorgu's the first glimpse of a proper recruitment works and how well it works out. Exactly. Because you could go pay 70 million for Alphonso Davies. And by the way, they spoke to him about it. They wanted to find out, okay, what was he like? What would it cost? But mostly because he was free. He would be free if he didn't stay at Bayern, right? That's one matter. If you can get him for free, that's a different. It's not. And the point is, you don't turn those down. You don't say, "Oh, we're not going to buy Davies because he's free," because we can't buy old players. It's not about having these crazy like hard rules where you don't jump on opportunities. The point is that you don't want to only buy those players. You don't want to only buy them. But then you do want to get some of the best ones that you can, in addition, in terms of the opportunities that come on the market. And so, yes, I think we'll see more players. Like you look at the midfield, you look in the attacking tens, you will see about players like Nippon, if he comes back into the frame, players like Chris Rigg, players like, I've mentioned him for the millionth time, players like Mastan Tuonu, players like Nene Dorgelis, right, to come into the team, where you can get a few more of those, players to come in and add numbers and be successful, and all of that, in the center back position, they're probably not going to go spend 60, 70 million, but see, is there a good player? You look at, how Bournemouth were able to get Hewson, right? For 15 million euros. Well, there's opportunities like that. And one of the things that I know was specifically highlighted is that, one of the things that was specifically highlighted is that it was De Ligt in the conversation that I had, that De Ligt, it's a good player, but it was the big name that the manager wanted, that they ended up going with over, very likely, a younger player, other players they had on their list that were younger, that were potentially more suited, that they maybe potentially thought were equally as good or could be better than De Ligt and would be cheaper and on lower wages. But we chose the big name, even though from the perspective of football people, you probably had young prospects who were just as good, who were just as good but younger and could be better or better than them. But it's not a big name. So Ten Hag is a liar, to be fair. The club has had De Ligt on their list for a long time. But, in the end, the choice to pursue him and going down the list was they had other options. And they didn't do it. And that's a part of the entire structure that has been in place for the longest time, is that, when it comes to the people making the decisions and how the structure was set up, it's always a name over a profile. And that is the main thing that has to end. So it's a comparison. It's a balance of these things. It's a balance of this. De Ligt is a name, but they had other names in mind. And yes, Ineos was there in summer, but most of the people were not. And they kept Ten Hag, and Ten Hag had a veto in his contract. And that threw off the entire summer, and Dan Ashworth wanted to back the manager. And again, that's why these people got sacked. So they screwed it all up last summer, and now they're trying to fix it. And if you're saying I was happy with De Ligt at the time, you're a liar. Because if you go back to last season, the one player I said I had the biggest doubts on was Matthias de Ligt. And when it first came up, I said we shouldn't do it. You can find my tweets. You can find my videos. Now, I was happy they got him on a decent deal, but that was the single player I had the biggest doubts on all of summer. And you can go find the tweets and you can go find the videos because I had those concerns and I had those doubts about it. And I was concerned in terms of the wages, and I was concerned that we were going for him based on the name. I like him. I actually think he's been better than most people have, even though he was really bad in the last game. But, I think that we need to do more than, I think it hasn't, point being, if they could have got someone they liked more, then, for cheaper, for younger, for all of that, then they would have, and they should have. And that's kind of the point, is making difference in, choices in the players that they want to get. And it's always a balance. It's always a balance. How come I don't mention Maguire anymore? He's been absolutely shit the last few weeks. But, I value Maguire for what he is. Which is, I think he's a player who's quite good, whose his passing range is better than the rest of them, and we kind of really miss. That's a big problem on De Ligt, is that his passing range is really bad. We cannot move the ball at all when De Ligt plays over Maguire, and we miss Lissandro a lot. So Maguire has his weaknesses and he has his strengths, same as everybody else, but he's also, for me, not a long-term guy. He's never been as bad as people have said he was. He was playing at a really high level up until recently. He's also, professional, but he's had some bad games. It is what it is. I expect that, but I also know Maguire isn't our long-term center back. He's got 1 year left, and then he's going to leave. So it's not a big deal to me. I'm fine with him on that basis. When we make signings, they need to be better. If we signed a player and they were as good as Maguire, it wouldn't be good enough for me. That's the problem with De Ligt, is he's not as good as Maguire because he cannot pass the ball. And unfortunately, that makes it really useless in certain respects, and is an issue. But that is part of the problem. De Ligt started the season, I thought, pretty well defensively. A lot of passion, good mentality, all of those things he still has, but his lack of ability to pass the ball is really bad. It's actually really problematic. But that was an example given, and that is an example given. But unfortunately, neither Maguire nor De Ligt fit it. Lenny Yoro does in the long term. Mazraoui, I think, is really good at center back most of the time. He was the only one who didn't really have a disaster against Everton. Mazraoui was like the only one of the back three who didn't have a disaster in the back three, and that's but he was cheap, and so that's okay. And that's fine and all, but definitely we need more players there, because we just don't have options right now either. So we'll buy center backs, but the point is it's definitely a big shift in strategy, and that's why we're looking at more continuity young players. That's why, Kenda, for example, a top young prospect. You could go try to find somebody else. Kenda is not a name. He's a player that everybody has looked at, and is a top player, and they'll look at him. So I think we'll be doing more signings like that. So I'm keeping a strong eye on those. However, that being said, I asked about Victor Osimhen in particular, because I have heard that United are interested in him for sure. And yeah, it's not a matter of they won't go for good players if they can get them. Osimhen is very likely the best striker that is out there right now, and will be available and will be on the market if United can. It's a little more complicated than just affording him, because it's going to be dependent a bit on where we finish, what kind of wages we have to offer, what he would want to come, and the where we finish could also affect how much he wants. They would be willing to get a name like Osimhen to come in. They would, because it's not just a name. He's literally the best striker available by a large margin in all of Europe. That will be available this summer, and they would absolutely be willing to sign him. It's not like in saying all this that we're not going to sign top players or good players. It just means that there has to be a proper balance and decisions on this. So they would be able to do it. They would be able to do. They would be interested in Osimhen if it works out. So we definitely want to keep an eye on that. He's a very, very good striker. That being said, they are also interested in buying more than one striker this summer, and that was intriguing to me. It tells me, obviously, Xerxes, obviously, long-term future is viewed as a 10. If he stays here, it'll be as a 10. But that it's quite possible that Rasmus Højlund goes on the move this summer, which is showing some of the ruthlessness that we have. Obviously, he's here now. If he performs, great. If he doesn't, they would definitely be looking to move him on. Whether it's a sale or whether it's a loan, they will be looking to buy potentially multiple strikers still this summer. That is in mind right now. So it's become a huge thing, and the other, and so we'll see where it goes from here. And I have some names to look into before I talk about it any further. But it is really interesting, and I'm not talking about Delap. I'm talking about others in there, because we know Delap is of interest, but I don't think you'd buy Osimhen and Delap. It's you're going to get one or the other in that case. So we'll see there. It's for sure not a done deal for Osimhen or anything like that. There's definitely a lot that would have to happen for that to go right, but it's not like they're unwilling to make those signings. But when they make those signings, they want to make sure they're really right and not just because of the name. So I think that'll show up when we start looking at things like the 10s in the midfield. But they are looking at multiple. Marcus Stevenson from your community change channel. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know. I recognize you. And yeah, and the potentially other ones are probably more in the potential other one or ones in mind are a bit more prospect on top, and so they would again be a second on top of signing a starting striker level player. Yeah, so at center back, we definitely have to keep an eye on this, because they're going to be signing center backs. But I would certainly suggest we'll start to see more Kendas, more Dorgelis's, more maybe Hackneys, more Chris Brigg type of profiles, and that we'll actually be signing a few of those, over the course of summer, rather than just buying the big names and the ready-made players that everybody knows about. Not all, bearing in mind, again, not all, but especially if we can get good players, ready players that are in the 40 million range, yes. But it's got to be a balance. It's going to be a balance. Last summer, we virtually bought all ready-made players versus, like a Dorgu versus like, etc. So it's going to be in the middle moving forward. We will also definitely be bringing in some more guys like Kone, who are maybe not even starting right now at the top level, but to get into the academy and to build things up. They really want to focus on, getting the academy up to actually promoting players into the senior team on a regular basis again. Obviously the purchase of guys like Cheeto and such are a start of that. There's going to be more they want to bring through in there, get the best talents in England into the academy and make our academy, the place to go for a route into the first team again as well. So we've got to bear in mind this is a runway, but this is a rebuild, and we need to rebuild the right way. And this summer, the reason you can't do what you did last year is if you do the same thing last summer, you spend so much money and a lot of wages, and it doesn't really work out. And then if we have a summer like last, we're not getting back into Champions League, but you've spent enormous amounts of money. If we can buy 2 or 3 additional players to that, spend less money, and some of them work out even better, then in the long term, you're going to be far better off. And then as well on these young players, the advantage is if they don't work out, then what happens? Then you can sell them, and you're not losing money. You're not losing an enormous amount of money. It doesn't mean that last year was a failure. It means that they don't want to keep that strategy going because it's just not enough. It's just not enough. It's not enough, and it's too much at the same time. It's a better window, but it's not because most of the players are decent, but it's not all being solved in one window either. It's just not the strategy they want moving forward. And that, again, is why they make changes after the summer. That's why Ashworth's gone. That's why Ten Hag is gone. And that's why Vivell's there permanently, why they appointed him, and why he's there permanently to help in the restructure. So a failure, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's call it what it is then. They were not happy with the way that the first window went. They were not happy with the way that, that it all has played out, and they want to do better. And they're much happier with purchases like Dorgu, Diego Leon, Kone, and Cheeto. And it's not to say that you're always going to get them, because 3 of those are basically academy players, but that you're going to be doing more of that, and at least splitting it 50-50, where you're getting, some good a couple first teamers, ready made, and some more of those young players. And I think we'd actually do a lot better. But we definitely don't want to make, disastrous types of signings. Yeah. So, again, they really, what it all comes down to, we know that, is that, they didn't have their ducks in a row for last summer, and you don't want Ineos, you don't want Sir Jim, you don't want Sir Dave, you don't want those guys making decisions on football. You want the right people. You want the right people to do the right things. So that's what we'll see. Okay. I'm gonna end it there. I'll bring out the chart, and I will, and I'm gonna build up again. I'm gonna redo the overall like transfer chart with the refocusing, that we have on youth, on ages, on all of that, and look at what we can do and go through it. And I want to talk more about the strategy in general there, for sure. So anyway, we will we'll find out more later on. We'll find out more later on. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna head off, have some lunch, and then do the watch along today. So make sure to join me over there in about 20 minutes. Where are we? Yeah, 20 minutes. What the hell? Wrong timing. I did the wrong time on that. I said it was gonna start at 12:25. Oops, my bad. I had it scheduled to start at the wrong time. Probably sent out a bad email on that. But yeah, come join me over here in like 20 minutes, and I hope to see you there. Otherwise, enjoy the game. We'll